Cyphers. We used to be called sorcerers, a rare breed of being that could wield mind-controlling powers. In reality, we could control electrical impulses, but we didn't come into our own until the first real computers were invented. Then we became tech gods. While we are still at an advantage to most, even those days are past now. Now, we're a curiosity in a world where tech bridges all the gaps and has mostly replaced magic. My name's Ulf Whitlock. I'm one of a small number of people who has inherited the powers of the Cyphers. I'm also a hunter. I track down criminals for the government and that juicy paycheck. I even have my own badge. I take on all types: orcs, elves, goblins. Shoot first, ask questions maybe. That's how Dad did it, it's how his dad did it, and I'm one for tradition. Welcome to the world of cybernetics and the punk, to my world of magic, blood, sweat and steel. Welcome to the Cyphers Edge. I entered the ground floor of the building and was immediately struck by how much nicer it looked on the inside. Someone had gone to a lot of trouble to clean up the place. I scanned the foyer. With the power out though, it was practically dark. I knew I was transmitting some semblance of my other sight to the surveillance truck, but there was no way to send the true scope of what I could see. Despite there being a power outage, there were a few points of light, independent power sources, personal battery-powered devices, some even emitting data. I couldn't see much past the first floor though. Too much steel and cement, cables and water pipes. All matter emits energy on some level. Too much of the low background junk, it was like looking through frosted glass. If I wanted to see, I'd have to keep moving up. I made my way to the stairs and began to climb, conscious of the possibility of traps. I took it slow. "What the hell are you doing?" The voice in my ear was Hammond. I'd let audio go both ways in case there was a development or an emergency. Now, I regretted that. My job. "We have protocols to follow, you goddamned cowboy." I heard him practically spit the words. "No, you have protocols. I have an obligation to keep your officers safe and neutralize the threat." I kept my voice low, hoping the target was still on the 5th floor and not able to hear me. "I'm sending in the team to back you up." I paused on the step, my anger starting to rise. "No, you will not. You will stand down. That's an order." He began to object. "You don't get to." I cut him off. "I have full jurisdiction over this incident now, as you know full well. If I die, and only if, are you allowed to send in more officers?" Hammond let out a very orcish growl. "You're being reckless, Commander." So nice of him to use my rank. Maybe he was trying to butter me up. "Listen to me. If this is the mark I'm after, he is way more dangerous than you know, and none of your officers would be safe. Reckless would be me letting you send them in." I resumed my slow march up the stairs. "Look on the bright side," I said softly. "If I die, you'll have one less cowboy to worry about." I heard a hand slam down on a surface, conceding defeat. Silence resumed over the comm. I continued to view the world in my other sight. Each floor I reached, I gave the hallway a slow inspection, making note of apartments that still had residents in them. I could see their CPUs and augmentations light up like complex multicolored light shows. None of them moved, none of them showed any sign of being the attacker, as far as I could tell. If I had to inspect every room, it would take me forever to get to the 5th floor. I would just have to give them the benefit of the doubt. Between the obvious description of the attacker and the elements of this whole thing, including the power outage and the drone being knocked out of the sky, I was getting the strong feeling that I was being called out. It was the other reason I felt safe ignoring the lower floors. I eventually made it to the 5th floor landing and rounded a corner that opened into a hallway. It went to my left and right, servicing roughly 20 apartments. At one end of the hallway there was a hole in the wall where a door had once been. Smoke issued from the hole and the carpet smouldered. I could smell burnt fabric and metal. I had no idea what had caused the explosion. There was no way to know without taking a closer look. I wanted to inspect the scene, but it was probably at the bottom of my list right now. I had higher priorities. The young dead orc boy lay in the middle of the hallway to the right. A bullet wound decorated his torso, visible due to him only being dressed in shorts and sneakers. My other sight confirmed he was dead. No brain activity of any kind. His blood had stained the grey carpet a dark red and pooled beneath him. That's what bravery and doing the right thing gets you. Poor kid just wanted to help. Probably didn't even think about it. He just saw someone in need and jumped to help them. While I thought that was a stupid thing to do, there wasn't many people in this city who would do the same thing. I leant down over his body and rolled him over. I closed his eyelids. Around his neck was a pendant, a mark of his religion. I quietly spoke a death prayer over him. I didn't adhere to the Orc gods, obviously, but I knew of them from my time in action, and how important it was to them. I stood up and resumed my inspection of the hallway. There was no sign of my target. Only 3 apartments held signs of occupancy. 1 to the left and 2 to the right. I decided to start on the one on the left first. As I approached it, stepping quietly down the hall, I noticed some of the apartment doors were open. I looked in as I passed. Nothing inside seemed to have been touched. I took a closer look inside one. It was normal, just what you would have expected if you'd walked into someone's home and they had just gone out. I guessed that the occupants had fled, leaving the place wide open. Still, it made me uneasy for some reason. I moved to the door of the occupied apartment. With my sight, I could make out lots of electronics inside and an occupant. I knocked sharply on the burnished steel door. No answer. "I'm here to help," I called through the door, wondering if they could even hear me. "My name's Ulf." Still nothing. Not that I exactly expected a reply. "I know you're in there. Don't worry. I don't want you to come out." I paused and watched their signal, the flow of energy through their body. They shifted uncomfortably behind a piece of furniture. "I just want to confirm that you're okay. Are you okay?" A strained young male voice replied. "Yes." Okay, so that probably wasn't my mark. "I can help you get out if you want." I could see him hunker down, scared. "Do you want to leave?" He shook his head. "No." I expected as much. "Okay, that's okay. Just stay in there. Stay safe. Keep the door shut." I stood back and eyed off the other 2 apartments down the hall. Which one had my friend in it? Or was he masking his own signal somehow, like he'd done before? We both knew what each other was capable of, more or less. If he was trying to get the drop on me, surely he'd be hiding. I repeated my speech on the next closed door. This time the person inside didn't even reply. They just moved further away from the door. Their hands were extended in front of them, and it took me a second to realize they must have had a gun or some such weapon ready to fire if I decided to come through the door. I backed off, not wanting to get perforated by some overexcited civilian. The third door stood ominous, like the last chamber in a gun of Russian roulette. I froze, my hand extended to knock. It could just be another resident. I knocked on the door, and the figure inside flinched. "Are you okay in there?" Again, no answer. They were huddled in a corner. I turned back to the hallway. Just as I was considering my next move, I felt a draft push past me, a shift in the air. I turned. The door behind me was open. The resident from the room I just attempted to speak with was standing behind me. A young elf woman, her eyes glazed, a knife in her hand. She swung at me and I jumped back. They weren't a fighter, they weren't even holding the knife properly, but they were fast, acting like a zombie in kill mode. I moved back and forth across the hall, dodging their strikes. I didn't want to hurt them, I recognized their eyes. They were in a Cyphers trance. Somehow they were still under control while not maintaining physical contact. Damn, that was a good trick. I didn't know that was even possible, but there was no denying the evidence of my eyes. I would recognize a Cyphers trance a mile away. I ducked under a wide swing with a knife, bringing my hand up to grip their wrist. I struck their hand and disarmed them. In the same motion, I grasped their head in my hands and attempted to break into their mind. I was only just opening up my mind to theirs, beginning the process, when all of a sudden I felt shots in my back. I let go of my first attacker's body and I dropped to the floor as more shots impacted my back. I let out a cry of pain as the elf woman started to lay kicks into me while I was down. Then there was the sound of the shooter reloading. I rolled to the side, popped my shields and got to my feet. The resident who was holding the gun slipped another clip home into the pistol. I backed up, both attackers in front of me now, my arms raised and semi-crouched to protect my legs. Rounds pinged off my shields as the gunman, an older human male, fired shots steadily as he advanced. I peeked between my shields, hearing the gun reload again. But this time, he didn't resume firing. The elf woman stood back, knife held in hand. The door further down the hall opened, and the stranger stepped out. Long coat, helmet, and all. "Hello, Hunter." His voice echoed down the hallway. He was using the speakers built into the helmet. "I thought I'd find you here," I said from behind my shields. "And I was hoping you would find your way up here." The confident swagger seemed a little bit off as I stepped past the orc's body. "I was hoping you'd show up again. It's not too often I get a chance to talk to others like me." He laughed, mockery heavy in his tone. "Please, I'm not like you. I'm leagues above your level of skill." I had to admit it, he was right. The contactless trance is certainly a good trick, I'll give you that. A shrug. "I thought you would like it." "So what now?" I asked, lowering my shields further. The stranger snapped his fingers and the two attackers began to march towards me. "Now I'll make a statement. Now I send a message to this city. I have big plans and killing you is just a bonus." The two closed in. I didn't want to hurt them, they were innocent. But I had to get to him, I had to neutralize them. No gun, no punch dagger, just good old-fashioned fists. I lunged forward, pulling in one shield and keeping the other up between me and the gunman. I kicked out at the elf. She dodged and slashed at my leg. She was fast, but she wasn't thinking for herself, not properly. I felt the bullets impact the shield, the shots moving down. He wasn't stupid, but neither was I. The leg on that side was all cybernetics. Small caliber bullets were capable of damaging it, but not to the point of catastrophe. I got lucky and he only hit solid panels. The knife was my first concern. The gun would run out of bullets eventually. Sure enough, he had to reload. I focused all my energy on the knife wielder and grasped her by the wrist, forcing the knife aside. Then grabbing her head again, not even trying to take over this time, I sent a pulse through her. It was the equivalent of a mental EMP, a full body shutdown. She hit the floor, safe and unconscious. Pain exploded in my shoulder and I instinctively spun around to face my assailant, arms up. I threw myself at the gunman. He continued to shoot as I landed on top of him. I could feel 2 shots where they'd made it through my armor, the gaps where panels met. The burning lead lodged in my flesh, half stuck in the subdermal armor itself. I screamed in pain, bringing my hand up level with his face, the movement shifting the bullets in the wounds. I repeated the body shutdown routine. He dropped to the carpet, out cold. I gasped for air, struggling to get to my feet. Doing stunts like that took energy. The energy had to come from somewhere. My body felt exhausted after less than a couple of minutes of combat. The stranger began to clap, slow, dramatic. Well, that was on point, glad to see he hadn't lost his showmanship. I staggered towards him. "I might not have much left in the tank." I spat out a glob of blood onto the carpet. "But what I have I'm going to use to kick 6 shades of shit out of you." I was only a few steps away, he hadn't even drawn a weapon. I was expecting something, some magic, a gun at least. He just stood there. "I just have one question, Hunter." Fuck it, I didn't care. I took the last couple of steps, my dagger slid from my arm, my hand splitting and folding back to let it free. I reached out and grabbed his coat, pulling him close. "Yeah, we'll make it a good one." He tilted his head to the side. "Can you stop them all?" A second drew out to an eternity as I suddenly remembered the exploded room behind me. A bomb, a rig gone wrong. An explosion rocked the building. I was blown backwards, spinning into the air. I fell to the floor with the stranger below me. He began to laugh, deep and loud. The speakers in the helmet crackled. "What now, Hunter?" he laughed, not even getting up. "What will you do now?" More explosions. I didn't even try and stop them. I struggled to my feet and made for the stairs. A fireball issued up the stairwell as another bomb went off. The stranger knelt. He laughed as I ran down the hallway to the 2 unconscious residents. I grabbed them both. It took all my strength to drag their limp bodies to the nearest open door and towards an apartment's large roadside window. I drew my pistol and fired into the glass. It shattered, in time with the explosions. The bombs setting off other explosions, other materials in the building. I looked down at the street. Firefighters and police scattered the road. I saw them pointing at me, the firefighters acting fast. They drew out a large brown block that immediately inflated into an airbag. I hefted the first limp body to the window. As I looked from the body to the door, I gasped. A red light blinked on the bookshelf next to the door. Oh no. I couldn't see at first. My senses were fuzzy. My hearing slowly began to register noises. A regular beeping sound, sharp and clear, rhythmic. The reality of the situation hit home as I picked out the sounds of people talking in the distance. The noise of footsteps in a hallway and in other rooms. I attempted to raise my hand to my face. I could feel tubes in my nose. I wanted to pull them away. My vision faded back in as I blinked sleep and gunk from my eyes. An off-white room lit by bright white LEDs. I didn't move my head at first. I just lay, staring at the ceiling. I didn't know how long I lay there before I tried to move again. I turned to one side, away from the door. Seated in one of the chairs in the room, huddled up, knees pulled high and legs wrapped in her arms, was Fia. It must have been daytime. Surely she wouldn't be coming out at night, even if I was laying fucked up in some hospital bed. I attempted to speak. A weak moan and a sigh was all I achieved. My voice croaked weakly, but she heard, her ears practically perked up. Her face emerged from behind her knees, her eyes red, stressed or from crying, I didn't know which. A concerned smile spread across her face. "Sup, punk?" I managed our childhood greeting. "I'm glad you survived," she said in a quiet voice, "because I'm gonna kill you." I chuckled weakly. "That's fair." We sat in silence for a long minute. "What happened?" It was a vague question. I wasn't thinking clearly. "You went into a building with a dangerous terrorist and got yourself blown up." She said it with such severity I actually felt guilty. "I meant after I got blown up." She hunched back down behind her knees. "You were blown through the wall. You took one of the residents with you. She's awake, but she has severe burns to her face and upper body. If it wasn't for the airbags, you'd both be dead." I rolled slightly, looking back at the ceiling. So the other one had died, just like the orc boy, and the one I'd saved was scarred, physically and probably mentally for life. "Any other casualties?" Fia paused. "Some other residents on other floors. 14 injured, 16 dead so far." I gritted my teeth. This was all my fault. I provoked him. He was going to do something crazy either way. No one rigs a whole floor to blow just on the off chance they can settle a grudge. I shook my head. "I'm the reason he hit the detonator." Fia scooted her chair forward and rested a hand on my arm. "If you hadn't gone in there, Hammond would have sent a team in. They would all have been killed. That would have been dozens of lives. That's what you prevented." I didn't respond. She was probably right, but I couldn't help feeling. No, I knew that it was all for me. Sure, the stranger might have blown it up anyway, but they were baiting me. They had called me there. "Besides," she drew her hand back, "he's dead now." I glanced at her out of the corner of my eye. "Really?" They assume so, still peeking through the rubble, but a large chunk of the building came down on top of him. He was in the center of it. "How long have I been out?" She shrugged. "Only a day or so." Only a day? Damn, it felt like I'd been out cold for a week. My body was numb for the most part, pain treatment doing its job apparently. "Is there any damage?" I asked, craning my neck to see down my body. It was hidden below a light blue sheet. The outline of my body looked about right. Fia winced. Yeah, there was something." "What?" Her face looked apprehensive. "Well, you took a bit of damage when you were blown through the wall." "The wall?" I asked incredulous. "You mean the window?" She shook her head. "No." I tried to do a mental check of my body, but it was so numb from the pain method I couldn't tell what was what. "Your back is pretty messed up. The docs patched you up. Rio said they'll cover everything. But your whole back and a small chunk of your spine, it needs to be rebuilt." I almost gaped. My spine? How was I not dead? I decided to voice the question. "How the hell did I survive?" Fia smiled weakly. I guess you're just lucky. I was amazed I wasn't dead. I was pissed I'd come so close. It wasn't what I had planned for my week when I'd come home, 2 days ago now? Rio wants to know if there's anything she can do. If there's anything you need before they put you back together. I took a mental backstep from my physical state and my trauma. Wait, what? Fia scratched behind one ear and took a second to adjust her posture. Hammond is still pissed. He thinks they could have handled it better without you, of course. But the whole interaction with him and the terrorist, they recorded everything you transmitted to the truck. Rio's gone over the whole thing with the local police specialists. She's pleased with how you handled this situation, despite the outcome. It was going to be a shit show either which way. Not gonna lie, I figured she'd be giving me a chewing out over this. Like I said, as far as they're concerned, you made the best of a bad situation. That was comforting. Rio having my back was a good sign. So I'm getting a bonus for what? Not dying? Essentially. She hunkered down in the chair. So, is there anything we can squeeze them for? You know, the new Halo jump packs are looking pretty dope. Dope. Fia had been watching old 90s cartoons again. I thought about it and grinned slightly. Well, since they're asking. I spent the next few days in the hospital bed. Fia went home every night and came back every day. Les dropped in and congratulated me on not dying. Then he informed me about how even though Hammond was making his displeasure well known, most of the station was thankful for me for ordering the team held back. Rio even stopped in to confirm my request and sign off on it. She wasn't surprised, and in her opinion, if I was going to get a free upgrade, it may as well be a good one. All in all, I called it a win. My last day in the hospital, I was reclined back in my bed flicking through channels. I was using the screen on the wall. Long exposure to my screening optics gave me a headache. The daytime free streaming channels are full of junk though, and I just hit the local news when Les came in. I thought he was just making a social call at first, but his face looked concerned under the friendly greeting. I muted the screen and sat up in bed. He got himself comfortable and threw me an iced coffee. Cheers. I cracked it and took a long drink. Thought you might want to pick me up. I took another sip and narrowed my eyes at him. Why? They found the body, he said uncomfortably. The body? I asked stupidly, still hopped up on drugs. Yeah, the terrorist Cypher. I raised my eyebrows. Really? Who were they? He hesitated. He didn't look happy. No one, he said eventually. I was taken aback. What do you mean, no one? He just let out a frustrated sigh. Just that, no one. Some nobody loner comms tech guy. What? That was it? It was severely underwhelming. Is there any history of them? Were they recorded as a cipher? He shook his head. No records of them having any talent. No previous charges. Lived with a housemate just over by the river. Just some normal Humie guy. Straight away and through my drug-addled mind, I could see Les wasn't happy. It didn't add up. I rubbed my face and leant back into the pillows. I don't believe it, I said stubbornly. Yeah, well, neither do I. So what? They're just going to close the case now. He shook his head and slouched back in his chair. Who the fuck knows? It's a classic though, isn't it? He was a loner, but such a nice guy. No one expected him to snap like that. His sarcasm was so thick you could spread it on toast. Why go to all that trouble though, just to get yourself blown up? I shook my head. Hammond wasn't happy we didn't get the guy alive. He wanted to ask questions. Yeah, well, that was never going to happen. Les nodded. Yeah, but I wouldn't do anything to piss him off. And he's not going to be handing out favours your way anytime soon. Just FYI. Not that I'd be looking to ask Hammond for a favour, but I got what he meant. Officially, I was on the blacklist. Shit happens. I'll scrounge my information from elsewhere. I chuckled. Les joined in, then glanced up at the screen, something getting his attention. Is that the news? I nodded. Yeah, why? I hit the volume. Les was looking intensely at the screen all of a sudden. I realised why once I started listening. It was a political rally, one of the civic leaders making a speech to drum up support. But it wasn't about just anything. They were talking about the explosions and the terrorist attack at the apartments. How much longer does our city need to put up with this pain and suffering, this violence? The speaker was a she-elf, tall with platinum hair and intense eyes. I recognised the face, but I'd never paid much attention to local politics. Who she was exactly escaped me. The banner across the bottom of the screen read, Local Candidate Sierra Tolomine. This terrorist destroyed not only people's homes, but their lives. Do we want another cataclysm in this city? I had to hand it to her. She was good at getting the crowd going. We don't just need a shift in leadership in this city. We need a new way of life. This city is in pain. Its wounds are raw. Her voice grew in intensity as she felt the crowd's energy peak with it. I can heal those wounds. I can take that pain away. I muted it again. There was only so much of that kind of talk I could take before putting a bullet through the screen. Wow, she's got a high opinion of herself, I said, resting back on the pillows. Les frowned. Yeah, well, she might actually be able to pull it off. That's the worrying thing. Why? I asked, taking another drink of my iced coffee. Man, I missed caffeine and sugar. She's just some wannabe politician. No, she's more than that. She's one of the heads of the old elf families. She's got the money to back up her campaign. I'm still not seeing a problem, I said. Les eyed me off and then returned his gaze to the screen. She doesn't just want to get elected to local government. She wants a return to the race segregation and the way things used to be. What? I was shocked. That was such old news, like nearly 400 years old. That was up there with gay and mixed race marriages and religious prejudice. No one cared about that shit anymore. Surely she hasn't actually stated that. That would be political suicide. He shook his head. Not openly. But I know people who are close to her. She's old, pushing 600, and she misses a world where her kind were on top. I was flabbergasted. I'm glad I could give her ammunition for a speech then, I said sourly as they showed footage of the ruined building and my own unconscious body being lifted into an ambulance. Les got up from the chair and patted me on the leg. I gotta get to work. I'll catch you around. I gave him a nod and turned the volume back on as he walked off down the hallway. Sierra flung her arms wide, rejecting the hate, embracing her followers in one motion. I will not stop until all the stains of our city have been washed away. The crowd reached a crescendo as they cheered. We will rise again! Thank you for listening to Cyphers Edge. Subscribe so as not to miss future episodes. Script and narration by J.J. Brandis. Music was provided by Kayor McLeish. Copyright J.J. Brandis 2024.